안녕하세요. You understood that. 잘 지내세요? Yeah? 저는 Mai-Anh-예요. Yeah? 저는 시카고에서 왔어요. 한국어 못해요. Okay, that's all the Korean I'm going to butcher. I was told that you all will be able to understand me perfectly if I were to preach in English. And so I'm going to take that privilege and may the words of my mouth be not only acceptable to God, but pleasing and forgivable to all of you this morning. What an honor it is for me to be with you here, not only today, but to be immersed in the environment of the GIT, the Global Institute for Theology, to teach, to learn, to broaden my horizons at this prestigious school. I am grateful to Dean Samuel Pang and the faculty and the staff that made my stay possible. A deep, I think the Asian 90-degree bow is in order for all of you. Especially a shout out to the 13 students of GIT that put up with me every week. They keep me on my toes as I try to keep them awake week after week. We've got only a few more weeks to go, right? It's quite an adventure because Dean Pang says that I'm young enough to fit right in. Right? That's what he said when he first met me. And most days I feel young enough to fit right in, right? I'm casual. I live in the dormitory over in Seongdo campus, right, with the students. And most days when I run into the undergraduates there, right, they're on their phone looking down, and I think, oh, I'm so cool, I'm one of them, right? Until I bump into one of them, and they look up, and they look at me, and they go, wow. So that means that some gray hair must have shown or something like that, right? My frumpy outfit. But anyway, it's amazing to be here because as I run into them, I can feel the Yonsei swagger, the Yonsei mystique, right? Now, I don't need to tell you that this university has a reputation that is worldwide, right? And I hear it the best, the swagger, the mystique from the alumni, right? So if there's a Yonsei student that would want to study at my school in the US, they will tell me with great pride, I'm from Yonsei. Or if I'm meeting with people, actually before coming here, I told people that I get to stay here to be on sabbatical for a semester, and they said, where? I told them, and they said, oh, Yonsei. And inevitably, I would run into reunions from alum, and they want to know, are you from Garrett? Are you what? No, nay, we're from Yonsei. So I have to admit that I am pretty smitten by the Yonsei swagger and the Yonsei mystique as well, right? And then one of the first things that I did in preparation for coming here today was I looked up the university's history, the legacy, right? I had known that Yonsei is part of SKY, right? One of the top 3 schools, top ranking in the country. And of course, when I got on campus, all the signage, the banners said, where you rank, right? Both in South Korea and all over the world. I'm reminded every day. But there were a few things that I learned that I'm sure you learned as well that was a great refresher for me. I had no idea, for instance, that Yonsei was a merger, right, of 2 schools historically, Yonhee and Severance Medical School, right? The hospital is actually the legacy of the country's first Western medical hospital here in the country, right? I had no idea that students and faculty of Yonhee used to participate in the independence movement for Korea. I had no idea that Yonhee campus was once declared enemy property under geo-colonial incursions. Did you know that? I had no idea that the campus was actually grounds for military drills during occupation. Did you know that? I had no idea that Korean history and Korean language were once foreign subject matters under a repressive regime for the university. I had no idea of the missional and missionary struggles to keep the institution afloat during wartime. And I had no idea that in 2020, 135 years later, the university now, Yonsei, would celebrate its anniversary, 135, in the middle of a global pandemic, right? With renewed vision for what? Pursuit of truth and freedom. I had no idea. And the lover of poetics in me was really impressed when I studied the meaning of your sign, your seal, right? The university shield. The ong, right? O, the O, am I saying it right? The vowel, the ong, and the sa, right? The S. My goodness, the circle. That's why I put it in the title. The circle, the ong, represents the ideal, complete, well-rounded person, right? And the sa, actually after the Chinese character for human, right, is supposed to signal an upward-looking pursuit for scholarly excellence. And all of that is protected in the shield. Truth, book, torch, freedom, right? And the arms altogether preserve the two core principles. You know the American expression, oh man, when something is really amazing, right? When I saw that, I'm like, oh man, literally, oh man. Yonsei, that's amazing. Oh man. Now, I am deeply impressed by the academic and socio-political legacy of this institution because it reminds me of my own institution's legacy. Let me tell you a story about my school. Garrett-Evangelical Theological Seminary is a small seminary school, a theological school in Chicago where I currently teach. It has its heritage from the merger of three institutions. The first is the Evangelical Theological Seminary, founded in 1873, roots in Mennonite Reformed German tradition. Right? The second is the Chicago Training School for City, Home, and Foreign Missions, specifically for women students who were going to be deaconesses, trained for social services, missional work in the city and beyond, right? Founded in 1885. And the third school was Garrett Biblical Institute, founded in 1853 by a woman. Eliza Clark Garrett was a Methodist lay woman who fought for her legal right to a widow's dower and donated nearly 2/3 of her inheritance to the founding of a seminary for the education of ministers at the time. Now, her husband, Augustus Garrett, was a well-to-do politician in the Chicago area, but he really wasn't keen on philanthropy, certainly not for church causes, and so he made sure that in his will, Eliza would get a very limited portion of it and limited right to use it, and he made sure that when she passes, all of her inheritance would go to his male heirs instead of whatever she wants to do. So what did she do? She consulted with her lawyer friends. She renounced that inheritance and claimed her legal right in the state towards a widow's dower, which then entitled her to half of his estate, that she could do whatever she wanted. And what did she do? She actually donated the significant sum of that to the founding of a school for ministers in the time. And it was at the time when the leadership, both political and religious leaders, were wanting to start a new university to advance academic excellence. And the university that they were thinking of at the time, the prestigious Northwestern University now, which Garrett Seminary sits on the campus of. Now think about it, that her gift helped to realize the, quote, grand desideratum of the educational enterprise of the American West of the time. She wanted to found a college for women as well, because it didn't exist, right? And schools didn't admit women at the time, but her means was not, it didn't make it possible. But guess what? In 1879, Garrett Biblical Institute became the second school in the United States to have awarded a theological degree to a woman, right? Today, Garrett Seminary stands on the campus of Northwestern University, still by Lake Michigan, the Great Lake, having graduated nearly 10,000 men and women all over the country, all over the world, including alum of Yonsei. So friends, we live and teach and learn in institutions the forebears of which knew that they lived in between times, right? Theology students should recognize what I'm referring to in between times, right? The already and the not yet. right? Certainly, the writers of the New Testament understood that theology because that was the framework of the gospel that the Apostle Paul wrote when he wrote to the Thessalonian Christians in the 1st century CE. The text that you heard today, it actually belongs to the lectionary text for this Thanksgiving Sunday, so I couldn't escape it. I had to use it, right? The already but not yet tensions were deeply felt by the Thessalonian Christians because they knew that any pledge of allegiance to the way of Jesus, faith in the way of Jesus, stood in direct contrast to, even opposition to, the political and cultic order of their day, right? You know this, right? Now, Augustus Caesar, Augustus Caesar was the worshipped father of, the head, the benefactor of the vast Roman Empire, the one who promised peace and security, right? Pax Romana, but to those who would submit under its domination and control, right? Now, the gospel that Paul preached, however, stood in opposition to that false peace and security. For Paul, God in Jesus had already broken into history. A new age has already been ushered in. God, not Caesar, was head, was father, was benefactor, right? And the followers of Jesus had only a foretaste of that liberation. The struggle continues until whenever that day comes, nobody knows, parousia, when the reign of God would be fully realized. So what do you do in between times? You cling to the power of hope, bolstered by lived faith and an ethic of love. Right? Now, the biographers of Eliza Garrett also told of how she really pursued, as a good laywoman would at the time, she wanted to pursue entire sanctification. How many of you recognize that? That experience of being filled by the Spirit, we refer to it now as what? Spirit baptism, right? That was a true mark for Methodists of the time, true mark of Christian perfection. And despite her multiple efforts, it just didn't happen to her. It never did. She was in the spiritual already, but not yet time. And yet, what did she do in the short 50 years of her life? She only lived to 50. Right? She led a life that we could say today as a perfect example of faith, love, and hope. Right? The kind of dream, the kind of vision, the kind of apocalyptic hope. And no, I'm not talking about zombie movies here, right? Apocalyptic is what theology students, what does that mean? Root word. I'm not looking at the New Testament professors. Apocalyptic is unveiling, is revealing, isn't it? Hope that reveals that God's justice, God's peace, God's regenerative power would one day be fully realized on this earth. So, students of Yonsei, you are inheritors of wisdom and practice that transcend over 2 millennia. You are learning to be students and leaders of the human condition, lovely expressions, right? Healers of the human spirit, conscience of human society, repairers of the breach, mediators of the holy. That's what you're training to be. This university promises that its education will usher you into, quote unquote, high society. That's what it says on the website, right? Positions of great power and authority, it says. Hold them to that, right? Oh, wait, I'm being recorded. However, we live in a world that still operates under the grips of imperial impulses of mastery, domination, and control. I hope that you will heed the words of the poet and cultural critic, African-American poet, Toni Morrison, when she addressed the graduating class of a very prestigious school as well in New York in the United States, Sarah Lawrence College. She said this to them, quote, "You will be in positions that matter, positions in which you can decide the nature and the quality of other people's lives. Your errors may be irrevocable. So when you enter those places of trust or power, dream a little before you think. So your thoughts, your solutions, your directions, your choices of who lives and who doesn't, who flourishes and who doesn't will be worth the very sacred life you have chosen to live, end quote. The dreaming which Morrison referred to was not, quote, the activity of the sleeping brain, or when you have sleep and you're tired from overstudying. How it is not idle wishful speculations, he said, but engaged, direct, daytime vision. Shall we call it daydreaming, right? It's a kind of apocalyptic vision that would allow us to be handed over to a faith that transcends our sense of mastery, a love that dissolves our impulses to dominate, and a hope in a power without possessive control, and a courage to live in the tensions of our already but not yet reality, to join the generative power of God, whom we believe is already at work, reforming, transforming this beautiful but broken world. So may that dream be the dream of the well-rounded women and men of this great university, and may that dream be the destiny that we will always give thanks to God for. Amen.